exactly where you were when it happened, when you heard about it.
Details are very sketchy at this moment. We don't know precisely what happened. We don't know the sequence. First of all, the president is safe.
Those are those big events, like literally you just stop and try to process what's going on, and then later you can bring that feeling right back when someone mentions that event. So the first one for me was when President Reagan was shot. I was about 10 years old, and I was in school, and the principal came in and announced to the class that our president had been shot, and that he was still alive and in surgery, and, you know, basically we just sat there because we didn't really know what to do about that. And I remember one kid laughed and he got sent to the office. But he was one of those people who just made trouble all the time. The next time there was a moment like that I can think of was when I was in, you know, a couple years later, I was in junior high, and back then we got to watch the launching of the space shuttle on TV when it happened. Like they would pull a TV in and we would watch it in class. And so we were all watching when the Challenger exploded. It's still emotional.
T-minus 15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
3 good APUs. Velocity 2,257 feet per second. Altitude 4.3 nautical miles. Downrange distance 3 nautical miles.
NASA cares to count. This morning it looked as though they were not going to be able to get off.
Pretty much everybody was quiet for the rest of the day because it was so horrible to watch it on TV live when it happened. Which of course gets eclipsed by 9/11.
Yeah. This just in, you were looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center.
On that day, I was driving from Oskaloosa to Columbia for class. That was the last semester of my finishing my bachelor's degree. And I had one class that day. It was a graduate level class, seminar style. There's like 10 people in the class with just a professor who was the chair of the department and also my advisor. And the class was on Michelangelo. And so I'm driving that morning, and I'm listening to Johnny Dare, and he's like, okay, so normally we don't do news, but we're going to talk about that a plane just flew into the World Trade Center in New York and, you know, all this stuff. Well, I was almost to Boonville in the drive, and Grandma and Grandpa still owned the house there, so I stopped. I stopped in Boonville, and I went in with the news on just in time. You know, they were showing live pictures of the building on fire, just in time to see the second plane hit. And I watched for another half an hour, but I really was running out of time, so I decided I'm going to go to class anyway. But I get to class, campus was put on lockdown because at that time the zoo had a nuclear reactor, and so knew a lot more about what was going on behind the scenes, and they were, on a high state of alert, and it was very stressful. We walk into class, which we think, are we going to have class? Are we not going to have class? You couldn't miss this class. And our professor, who has, and at that point, like right before we went into class, we heard about the Pentagon, and that there was still a plane in the air, and all flights in the entire country were grounded, canceled, like just all this stuff was going on, and we're starting to realize that we're under attack. And we walk into class, and here's Dr. Land. So today, no clue what's going on. We're trying to tell him, and he's just like, oh, yeah. So it was the most flat conversation of that entire semester, and he kept trying to push through, and like, we're not going to worry about current events. We need to talk about Michelangelo and and we were talking about a book by Vasari about Michelangelo, and I just remember we're all looking at each other like, is he for real?
So did he not even realize that the university he was teaching at was on lockdown?
No, and the next week he apologized to us because he had no idea the gravity. Like he thought we were talking about some plane crash, like it was just a plane crash, and so he did apologize the following week, but then continued the discussion. So, but you just knew it was, and what was going to happen. Were we going to war? And then when I got home to Oskaloosa, of course, your dad was, already an assistant fire chief at that time, and so we always knew a lot about what was going on as far as emergency calls. And there was a very serious car accident in Oskaloosa that day as well, and 2 high school girls were on their way home from school, and their little sister was in the back seat, and they were arguing and driving too fast on the gravel road and rolled the car, and were very severely injured. But there was no life flight that day because, well, there was life flight for a couple of days because of 9/11. And so anyway, they were rushed to the hospital, and within a few days they both had passed away from their injuries. And so that is forever tied to that event, even though that wasn't, national in scale or anything. It really, really just sucked the life out of Oskaloosa that day.